First impressions matter, and in any conversation, especially a difficult conversation, your opening line can be a make or break situation for how successful the conversation is. I'm Dawn, and this is Have That Talk. Today I want to share some practical techniques for how you can start your difficult conversation or your conversation with a difficult person. Opening a conversation has two main pillars. The first is to be specific, and the second is to create space for the other person to say their piece. And the thing that links the two together is pausing to listen. So let's look at some examples. The first one is to lead with curiosity. The way you've been showing up at work recently has been different to how you were before. I've been wondering what's going on. In a situation like that, you might want to ask, are you okay? Is everything all right? And the problem with these questions is that they're closed questions. They offer either a yes or no answer. They don't invite more openness. And they also create a dilemma for the person receiving that question. If they're not okay, in that moment, they might not be ready to talk about it. And so what you might hear is, I'm fine, everything's fine. And the situation remains hanging in the air, unresolved. So instead of asking about what the other person is thinking, you express what you've noticed about the situation, your observation, and you invite the other person to say their piece. The second example is the more neutral observation of what you've noticed. 3 different colleagues came to me independently to talk about how you've come across in recent conversations. I want to talk about what's happening before it becomes a bigger pattern. Now, although the observation has come from 3 people, the way you've presented the situation is without judgment and without a conclusion about what's going on. It's an open, neutral statement. That's why it's important to give contextual data, the time, the frequency, the pattern that you've noticed. This makes the situation specific to a particular behavior or a particular situation, and it avoids the trap of making an overall judgment about the person. In the third example, you invite the other person to share. I sense that there's more to this than you are telling me. I really want to understand what's going on, and not just what you think I want to hear. The kind of questioning that isn't helpful is if you were to ask, is there anything bothering you? Is there anything wrong? Because the likelihood is that somebody will just politely say no. They're not sure whether it's safe to tell you the whole story. So instead, invite them to share the bigger picture. Acknowledge that it may be difficult, but reassure them that you want to hear it, and they won't be reprimanded for sharing something that might be a bit sensitive or risky to bring out into the open. So when you invite them in, make them feel safe. Which brings us to the fourth example I want to share. This is about giving reassurance. For instance, after a really challenging board presentation, in the follow-up meeting, you kind of need to reassure the other person that they're not in trouble, but you're here to debrief in a productive and positive way. Before we start, I just want to say one thing. This conversation isn't about who's to blame. I'm here to understand the full story of what happened so that we can discuss it and find a way forward together. And you notice I'm avoiding saying something like, don't take this personally, but I'm not trying to be difficult, but because this primes the listener for the exact thing that they want to avoid, their sense of embarrassment and shame and guilt and frustration. When things go wrong, when mistakes are made, it's important to have a conversation about how it came to that. But this conversation can only be productive if there's no blaming or shaming involved. When the debrief is about how to improve processes and how to make things better in the future. And the final opener has something to do with the fact that you've been avoiding this conversation for a long time. And so that's exactly how you start. This has been on my mind for a while, and I should have brought it up earlier, but we should talk about it and figure out how to move forward together. So instead of jumping in with a grievance that you've been holding on to for so long, you acknowledge that you should have raised it earlier. And by doing this, you've conceded a bit of your own ego, and you give the other person permission to do the same. And also build a foundation for an eye-to-eye conversation and a resolution of the issue. So, in a nutshell, lead with curiosity, make a neutral observation, Invite the perspective of the listener. Give reassurance that it's safe to speak. And finally, acknowledge your own shortcomings and your desire to resolve things together. These are 5 examples of the way that you can open the conversation when you go in to have that talk. Okay, I'll see you next time.